Devotees, welcome to BhagavatSanga program. This is our Srimad Bhagavatam program where we read the prayers of pure devotees. We have started with a new theme. We just had one class before last year, and from this year we are continuing with this new theme. The theme is prayers of Nalakuvara. These are beautiful prayers in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 10, from verse 29 to 38. Today we have a very wonderful devotee, Aditi Mataji, who will be sharing the prayers and her realization. Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Veena Mataji. Hare Krishna, devotees. So before I start, let me share the screen. So before I start with the prayers, I'm going to just give the invocation mantras. Om Agyanam Timirandasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pashyatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubha Evacha Patitaram Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jaya Advaita Gadadhara Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna devotees, I want to thank Satyasara Prabhuji and Jai Subhadra Mataji, Veena Mataji and Prashant Prabhu for the opportunity to give this presentation, which I'm giving only for my self-purification. If I make any mistakes, please forgive me. So, before we start with the prayers, I'm going to just give a brief introduction of who Nalakuvara and Manigrava are. So as you see in the first slide, Nalakuvara and Manigrava are twin brothers, both the sons of the wealthy Yaksha king Kubera. Kubera, the treasurer of the demigod, was a great devotee of Lord Shiva, and so was blessed with immense material opulence. Nalakuvara and Manigrava were also devotees of Lord Shiva, but because having so much wealth and seeing so much opulence of their father, they became extravagant and lost their sense of decency and started behaving in a very irrational manner. They became arrogant and indulged in reckless behavior, losing sight of their spiritual duties. So in the next slide, we come to Devarishi Narada's curse. So once these two demigods, desiring to enjoy wine and women, entered the garden of Lord Shiva in the Kailasha mountains on the banks of the Mandakini Ganges. While they were thus enjoying themselves with wine, women, and splashing in the water, all of a sudden Narad Muni, the great sage, happened to pass that way. The young woman at once got ashamed at being naked before the great sage Narada and began to cover themselves with all haste. However, the demigods were so intoxicated that they did not care about Narad Muni. They only cared about having fun and enjoying themselves, and they did nothing to cover themselves up. Seeing this, Narad Muni realized that he needed to do something to make them realize that what they are doing is wrong. And therefore, he exhibited his causeless mercy upon them and cursed them. Narad Muni cursed Nalakuvara and Manigrava to become twin Arjuna trees and remain in the courtyard of Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj. Now we come to Narad Muni's compassion. So Narad Muni actually was moved by compassion and decided to free Nalakuvara and Manigrava from the false pride and ignorance. They realized that though they were sons of the great Kubera, They were too engrossed or too attached to material pleasures. And he needed to do something to get them to realize that what they are doing is not right. However, this curse was also a blessing because Narada granted them the opportunity to see Lord Krishna face to face. And we will see that after 100 years of demigod time, these two trees were liberated from their plight. Narada's curse aimed to teach that excessive attachment to material opulence leads to moral degradation and ignorance of life's ultimate goal or purpose. Through this act, Narad intended to direct them towards spiritual awakening and devotion. Now we'll see how Nalakuvara and Manigruva are freed from the curse. So the Narad Muni, actually the curse was a benediction, for these two twin demigods. Because when they were cursed, not only did they become the Arjuna trees, but also after 100 years, they would actually be able to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vasudev face to face. Krishna, the knower of everything, to fulfill the truthfulness of the words of his devotee Narada, crawled towards the twin Arjuna trees, who were actually Nalakuvara and Manigrava. By dragging the wooden mortar behind him with great force, he uprooted the trees and they crashed to the ground. The two personalities, Nalakuvara and Manigrava, were freed and they offered their obeisances and prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. And you can see this in the picture, that how Lord Krishna as a small boy freed Nalakuvara and Manigrava. So this, I've given a brief description about who were they, why were they cursed, and how they got freed from the curse. But once they saw the Lord, they then started offering prayers. And now we come to the second part of this presentation, which is known as the prayers of Nalakuvara and Manigrava. So this account, the deliverance of the demigod Nalakuvara and Manigrava, occurred during Lord Krishna's Damodar Leela. And due to Narad Muni and the Lord's blessing, the twin Arjuna trees fell and two great perfect personalities came out of these two trees. Nalakuvara and Manigrava, with bowed heads and folded hands, offered their obeisances to Lord Krishna. They said, because of their continuing memory, they could understand the supremacy of Krishna, and they admitted that we should be delivered by the blessings of Narad Muni was all your plan, O Lord. Therefore, you are the supreme mystic. Everything, past, present, and future, is known to you. So it's only the Lord who knows all this. Your plan was made so nicely that although we stayed here as twin Arjuna trees, you have appeared as a small boy to deliver us. This was all your inconceivable arrangement. Because you are the Supreme Lord, you can do everything. So here it tells us that it was all God's plan. Why? Because God only knows the past, present, as well as the future. And this is also said in the Bhagavad Gita. The shloka says, Vedaham samatitani vartamani cha Arjuna bhavishyani cha bhutani mam tu veda na kaschana. What this means is that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I know that the Bhagavan is saying that as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I know everything that has happened in the past, all that is happening in the present, and all things that are yet to come. I also know all living entities, but me no one knows. So this is also written in the Bhagavad Gita. However, Nalakuvara and Manigrava, seeing Lord Krishna, emphasize Krishna's omnipresence, describing him as existing within every atom of creation, in all directions and in all beings. Once again, the Bhagavad Gita also confirms this In chapter 10, verse 8, it says, Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvita. So what it means is, I am the origin of all creation. Everything proceeds from me. The wise who know this perfectly worship me with great faith and devotion. Shri Krishna begins the verse by saying, Aham sarvasya prabhavo, meaning, I am the supreme ultimate truth and the cause of all causes. Lord Krishna does not directly involve himself in the works of creation, maintaining and dissolving the material universes. For the purpose of material creation, he expands himself as Karnodakshayi Vishnu, who is also called Mahavishnu. All Vedic literature agrees that Krishna is the source of Brahma, Shiva, and all the demigods. It is the Lord who has bestowed upon us this amazing ability of memory and knowledge. For example, when we go to sleep, we forget everything. But when we get up, we realize exactly what had happened before we went to sleep. How is that possible? All this is only because Lord has given us this beautiful thing called memory. And this is also given in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15.50, where it says, Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto, mata smritir jnana apoham cha, vedesya sarver aham eva vedo, vedanta krit vedavid eva chaham. The Supreme Lord is actually situated as Paramatma in everyone's heart, and it is from him that all the activities are initiated. He is worshipable not only as the impersonal Brahman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the localized Paramatma, but as the form of the incarnation of the Vedas as well. So the God is seated within our hearts, and it is from him that we realize everything. Nalakuvara and Manigriva were really overwhelmed after seeing Lord Krishna, and they continue to glorify him. They say that he is the ultimate controller of time, the creator and sustainer of the universe, and the one who can effortlessly perform any action. In fact, in Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna describes his energy of time. In Canto 2, Chapter 5, verse 22, after the incarnation of the first Purusha, Karnodakshayi Vishnu, the Mahatattva or the principles of material creation take place, and then time is manifested. As such, Kala, time, may be taken as the first cause of all creation. And by transformation of nature, different activities of material world become visible. Then Nalakuvara and Manigrava tells us about the different avatars. The Lord appears in this world when they're in very many different avatars. They appear in bodies like those of an ordinary fish, tortoise, and hawk. But all these ordinary things exhibit impossible activities and incomparable strength and power. And all this is only because the Lord is there within them. As I said in the Bhagavad Gita 4.7 to 8, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata, abhyuthyanam adharmasya tatadmat srujayaham, paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samstha panarthaya sambhavani yuge yuge. So what this tells us is Krishna appears as an incarnation when the real spiritual life declines and when rogues and thieves come in this world to disturb us, our peace. And that is when God takes an avatar. Now, when we talk about avatars, I'm just going to give a brief description of, there are 6 categories of avatars. We have first the Purusha avatars, like the Karnodakshaya Vishnu, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, Shirodakshaya Vishnu. Then we have the Leela avatars. Leela avatars are actually pastime incarnations. All the pastimes which the Lord does, which we see a lot of them in Srimad Bhagavatam, like, the Varaha, Matsya, Narasimha, Kurma, all of them are Leela avatars. That is, the God does Leelas. Then we have the Guna avatars. When Vishnu assumes this Guna avatar, it is Sattvic Guna, the mode of goodness. And Vishnu does the work of maintenance of the universe. Then we have Brahma, which is the Rajasic Guna, the mode of passion, who does the creation of this universe. And then we have Shiva, which is the Tamas Guna, mode of ignorance, who looks after the destruction of this universe. Then we come to Manvantara. Brahma's one day is equal to 1,000 Chaturyugas and is divided into 14 periods of the rule of the Manus, who are the father of mankind, known as Manvantaras. Then we have the Yuga avatars. We have 4 yugas, namely Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, and Kali Yuga. And lastly, we have the Shaktavesha avatars, empowered incarnations. When the Lord empowers a living entity with some particular Shakti or power and sends him to do a specific activity representing him, then it is known as Shaktya Avesha avatars. Example is King Prithu and Vedavyas. Nalakuvara and Manigruva then prayed. They say, O Supreme Form, we are always servants of your servants, especially of Narad Muni. Now, give us permission to leave for our home. It is by the grace and mercy of Narada that we have been able to see you, Lord, face to face. So here we see that it was Narad Muni who was the great devotee of Lord Krishna. He became compassionate towards Nalakuvara and Manigriva, and he saved them from a fallen life. The twin demigods were in a mode of darkness and therefore were unable to control their senses. It was therefore the duty of the saintly person, Lord Narad, to save them from this abominable condition. Narada therefore thought that the best punishment for them was to make them immovable living entities or trees. Although trees are covered by the mode of ignorance, they cannot do any harm. The great sage Narada thought it was fitting that although the brothers, by his mercy, would be punished to become trees, however, they would continue to keep their memory, to able to know why they were being punished. That was very important because he gave them the memory, and so they knew that what they had done was sinful. And this was like an atonement for their sin. Narad Muni therefore contemplated that the 2 demigods would remain for 100 years in the time of demigod in the form of the Yamala Arjun trees. In the end, Nalakuvara and Manigriva conclude their prayers with devotional surrender. Everyone should be engaged in the service of the Lord by following the process of bhakti. Thus, Nalakuvara and Manigriva reminded us that we should always engage ourselves in the process of bhakti, and that could be done through the 9 process, which is Shravana, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, and Atma Nivedan. When the demigods Nalakuvara and Manigriva finished their prayers, the child who was there, Lord Krishna, who was the master and the proprietor of Gokul, he was yet bound to the wooden grinding mortar by the ropes of Yashoda. He began to smile as he knew that his devotee sage Narada had shown his causeless mercy by saving the demigods from the abominable condition of pride and opulence. He had saved them from gliding down into the lowest condition of hellish life. Nalakuvara and Manigrava's lives have now become successful because they have developed ecstatic love for Lord Krishna. This would be their last birth within this material existence. And now they could go back to their father's residence, Kubera, in the heavenly planet. And by remaining in the attitude of devotional service, they will be liberated in this very life. After this, the demigods circumambulated the Lord many times and bowed down before him again and again, and then left for the heavenly board. From this, we learn that even if we must suffer through birth and death, even a moment's contact with a devotee can lead us to the spiritual land of Gokul Vrindavan, thus making all the sufferings which we have done or which we have gone through worth it. So we should always think of the Lord, serve Him, and as Nalakuvara and Manigrava has said, we should always, have bhakti towards the Lord. And if we even fall down, we should try to come back and keep continuing our bhakti. And then one day we'll definitely go to Gokul Vrindavan. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, that was such a beautiful class. So beautifully, you narrated the pastime. And as you were describing, at the end, the conclusion that I could come up with was like how Manigriva and Nalekko, how they were, how much arrogant they were, and how by the association of pure devotee and Lord's mercy, and by they themselves doing devotional service, they were completely transformed. This is such a beautiful story. Very nicely, you recited the prayers and shared your realizations. And I really like that you gave the categories of Lord's avatars. Sorry, yeah, categories of Lord's avatars and what they mean. Very nice, Mataji. Nice realizations also. Thank you so much for presenting today. With that, devotees, we conclude the Bhagavad Sangha program today. Thank you all for joining. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.